Okay, here we are. We are live. Smart Impressions here. Rachel, Trisha, happening now on LinkedIn Live. Welcome to the show, Trisha. It's great to see you again this week.
And you too, girlfriend. Always good to see you.
Awesome. It's so nice. We can just keep this conversation flowing and going on either sides of the planet right now. I'm located in Viva Las Vegas, Nevada. Very exciting times to be having a good time and having a great conversation about human connectivity, and helping people online on LinkedIn, really kind of getting engaged and staying connected. Are we always struggling to stay connected?
Well, I don't know. I think everyone seems to be online 24/7 these days. It's crazy.
No doubt. No doubt. And I think not only are they staying online, but they're just also like trying to reach out. There's so many people just trying to connect, and we're just trying to make it easier for those to find the tips and tools and based on the stuff that we know and the expertise that we kind of, we live by, so we can share those stories to everyone watching here on LinkedIn Live. So it's so nice to have everybody here. We love to have the engagement, answer questions live, and we have a great conversation today. What are we talking about, Trisha?
Well, today let's talk about mastering effective communication, because I think that it is vital, whether it's from a digital perspective or in person, whether it's sales, job searching, applications, etc., and general life. How do you be an effective communicator?
Absolutely. It's a great conversation. We're moving across a number of different topics each week just to kind of help people see what they need to become better, as a human, as a salesperson, as a job seeker, and there's some really foundation tools and tricks that I think this conversation specifically will be really helpful for those out there. Messaging, storytelling, it's all about storytelling. You see every marketing, magazine, publication talking about the power of that storytelling. People want to be engaged, and in order to get engaged, they gotta get emotional. You gotta get authentic, right? So I got my own tips here, but I do know that being able to tell a compelling message and creating that story, is going to drive that human connection, which everyone, desires to get. And it's really pivotal for those successful relationships that you're trying to establish. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, when we're in the digital world, data is absolutely everywhere. We're no shortage of information. You can jump on any form of platform, Google, ChatGPT, whatever you want, and find the answer. But, therefore it means you need to be really clear, concise, and probably precise in order not to cause any confusion or ambiguity in the messaging.
You got to believe it. Yeah, right. And I sometimes it's hard. Like, where do you begin? I got to tell a story. It sounds so foreign, like when was the last time you heard a story? Once upon a time, we kind of go back to our childhood, but it seems like any experience where you are trying to connect with someone.
Yeah,
it is so important, right? For you to actually have a couple parts of that story so that you can drive that connectivity, right?
Yeah, I think listening, empathy, and of course, probably having emotional intelligence is vital aspect. Whether that's in sales, again, your social media content. So you can easily plug in a bunch of information from LinkedIn, but is it actually going to be getting engagement? And so, how do you maximize your communication to be getting high engagement rates from your audience?
Yep. And there's a couple key factors that have to be considered. So, for example, if you're telling a story, you better have a very concise focus of what the story is supposed to be about, what it's supposed to achieve as the final outcome, right? So, if you're telling a story to an audience and you want to get a point across, it's very important to make sure that there is actually a build of characters in this story. You actually also want to get into details about different parts and aspects of the story so that people can really dive in and feel engaged. My mother-in-law is incredible at telling stories. Every time she tells a story, she'll tell me something that I've never been there, but I listen, and so she just grabs me. She holds on to me. I mean, to the point where I start tearing up in some cases because it's so emotional. She's an expert doing this, but that's exactly, the trick. How do you make it emotional for the other person listening, right? So they can be engaged. And the only way to do that is to tell something authentic, right?
Well, I guess you need to you need to understand what is the end goal of the communication. So whether you are trying to sell something, what part of the journey, or where in that journey do you need to be or give that emotional and empathetic approach versus, maybe you're trying to create positive change within the situation or giving feedback. So where in part of that feedback that you're giving, where do you insert those empathetic attributes to that communication channel?
Right. And so I think I would say tip number one, empathy and captivating to your prospect, whoever you're talking to, right? It's all about creating that narrative, understanding, like kind of what the prospect's needs or challenges may be, and really driving this conversation that resonates with them, that they can connect and they can create, and they connect when you have empathy. But when you have a relatability that someone can actually kind of grasp hold of because they feel similar, they've experienced something similar, or they have like a desire and need to solve a similar, pain point that your story encompasses, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, tailoring the message. So who are you talking to? Is it for a product that have people who have never used the product before, or you're writing content into other subject matter experts within that space? So making sure that the messaging is tailored to those who are actually reading it and not just having a generic one-size-fits-all approach.
Yeah, the person of who you're talking to, I think, is one of the most important things. I think also that these compelling stories and just the authentic part of the human connection is all about building trust and credibility, and that's something I love to help people try to accomplish, because it's not an easy thing. It's a journey, and there's time that has to be considered as well. But I think by sharing real life examples and being authentic, even success stories, people automatically connect, right? They start to connect, and that relationship and that bond just grows deeper and stronger the better those stories are of just sharing. Because people, if someone's going to tell me something personal, I'm going to feel a lot more, I would gravitate to listen and be more engaged, because it is so personal and it is so raw, right? And so I think that really evokes this like immediate sense of connectivity, and just can build really strong, especially if you're in sales, especially if you're looking for long-term relationships building. This is how it begins, and this is how it creates stickiness, right? Because there's compassion, there's empathy, and there is this like psychological way of connecting so that you can actually create those human connections. So that's another great way, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you raised 2 points that brought something to my mind. Is I think in our region, especially in the GCC, we've got a lot of expats. You want to be making sure that your communication is also culturally sensitive. So making sure that whoever you're speaking with, that you are communicating in the style that's accordingly to what their cultural norms are, or what their diversity includes. And then most importantly is networking. So building that relationship and having the right communication to effectively have the right network for the next time that they need them.
Well, there's no doubt that people want these long-term relationships. They're looking to evoke like this human connection, and the only way they could do it emotionally is, or one of the best ways to do it is through the storytelling. And I think sometimes people complicate that to make it more complex than it needs to be. If you got the person that you're trying to talk to and you understand kind of from their perspective through the empathy that we talked about last week, and you're able to build a story that has a very clear line of what that story is supposed to encompass. So it usually includes kind of a problem that was solved, and what that looked like, and all the parts of that, and the people and the feelings and the emotions, and really talking authentically, you're gonna continue to build this relationship and evoke emotions. That's what it's all about, evoking emotions, because I think once you do tap into that emotional play, and I think you see it in marketing all the time. Brands are like evoking all these images, to evoke human emotions. But brands have gotten consumed with this competitive space, right? So sales it's overwhelming. Everyone's trying to sell, right? So it's not, you kind of tune out because it's just all over the place. So if you're able to actually engage and have a conversation with another human and take them on a journey of something that you experience personally, there's a lot of trust there that's built, a lot of trust. And I think that's really powerful, really powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a continual learning process. So, building upon the knowledge and the feedback that you've got as you tell these stories, it's so important therefore to be adaptive. And then again, not using that sort of cookie cutter approach, whether it's in face-to-face or personal branding. I think want to link it back to LinkedIn because I think that it's important that when we're offering these sort of branding services or support with sales and sales training, etc. How do you get your businesses or your CEOs, your directors to be having content out there that is received by those online reading it and not just lost among all the other millions of other people using the LinkedIn platform?
Yeah. Well, understanding what you want to say is really important, right? And what you're trying to convey. And then the emotions that you want, that you're aiming to evoke. So it becomes very specific, you know. But again, if you're trying to show someone that you can provide value, and you want to just be able to connect with them, seeing and understanding how the pain that they're feeling and that you understand that pain, you want to tell a story exactly what they're going through. So you can be really specific to what it is that you're trying to address, And so it's really about identifying your core messages and really being able to understand the purpose of that story. Because without it, kind of, there is no purpose. It's kind of, you need to be specific. You need to be able to communicate, very, very strategically so that you can achieve what you're set to, whatever goals you're set to accomplish.
Yeah, quite often, and maybe this is in closing, but quite often, the talker in the room is not always the brightest or the sharpest tool in the shed. And you sometimes have to wait or listen to the person that is sitting quietly in the room and then, hear what they've got to say. So respecting other people who maybe are the quieter mouse.
Yeah, that's always interesting, The ones that are in the corner, they're not saying so much, usually have a lot to say, but may not be the first or the loudest to say it, right?
Exactly. Quite often we look to the people that are always talking and always communicating, but forgetting that those silent ones are actually got the most impactful
personas, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's always good, to just to think about if you're ever hosting something or you're running a workshop, etc., and that you're speaking to actually listen. So making sure that when you finish, you're then absorbing what that person is responsive to, then craft the next message after that.
Yeah, I think leaving your audience with kind of like a memorable takeaway, or a lesson where they could walk away and be like, oh, they could tell that story to somebody else later on. And be like, oh, I went to this interesting dinner party and I met some really interesting person that told me this story that really struck a chord and made it memorable for them to even repeat, right? I think those are the most powerful stories too, but you're right. The people in the corner that may not be the one telling the story, but the person engaging and listening to the story is just as important. And that's why I say, build your plan of exactly who you're talking to, know who that person is. That's so important so that you can build that story, that plot, that solution, that evoke emotions and really try to connect further to really develop a long-term relationship. I think that's probably, some of the best stuff about creating human connections.
I love it. And I want to finish this conversation in terms of, how can we do that for a CV or LinkedIn? Because at the end of the day, as a professional, if you're applying for a new job, communication is the number one reason or rationale as to why you'll be successful in that job, because you can communicate the value that you're going to be bringing to the next organization. So, having a 2-page document or having a LinkedIn profile, having a sales pitch, it's really, really important that you're your message is communicated and articulated in the most transferable way possible that articulates the value that you can bring to that company.
Yeah, I agree. And so, whether it's writing, whether it's speaking, whether it's video, it doesn't matter. The point is to connect, and by creating these human connections, and storytelling is one of the best ways to do it by far. And I think you could do that in so many different ways today. Communication comes across in so many different ways. And so, whether it's your voice, whether it's a visual, whether it's even, even something written, I think it's powerful and can do just heaps and bounds of successful, solutions based on who you're, what you're trying to achieve. And I think human connections is what we're talking about. Here, Trisha, Rachel, we are coming together just to share our insight, our suggestions, and really, as experts of helping people connect, there's no better way than doing it in storytelling this week, right?
Absolutely. I love it, Rach. As a pleasure. As always, it's a pleasure to connect. And I would love to hear from people listening. If there's something that you guys would like to see us talk about, or if there's anything that you'd like elaborated further, please let us know. I'm happy to give you my opinion.
We want to share. We want to engage. We love that you're here. I'm Rachel from the Biz Advisors. I got Trisha Chapman from Impressive CV. I got a beautiful background now that you don't miss us. And we are going to be here on LinkedIn Live every Tuesday at 10:30 GMT +4. Can't wait to hear from you and see exactly what we should be talking about next. I hope you've enjoyed our conversation. I know that I have. Trisha, it's a pleasure.
As always, ciao.
Ciao, darling. Have a good one.